Today I'm taking you with me on the 200-mile bus ride between New York City and Boston to show you what it's like travelling on Flixbus in the USA. We'll see how the buses compare to the European ones, what the 5-hour journey up to Massachusetts is like on this cool autumn day, and we'll take a look at how much tickets cost and if it ends up being worth it. I've been all over Europe with Flixbus at this point, and despite some questionable experiences, I've always seen them as a good thing. Greyhound, on the other hand, well, if you've been watching the channel for a while, you know that I have lifelong beef with them after a bad experience the last time I was here in the States. And we'll also have that story in this video, but suffice to say that when I saw that Flixbus's expansion into the States was basically a merger with Greyhound, I was conflicted, but I decided to give them a shot, and on the subway ride up to Midtown Manhattan, I told myself, it's just a short ride up to Boston. We're just going to test how the Flixbus USA experience compares to Europe, and if it's less stressful than traveling with Greyhound, what could possibly go wrong?
Okay, let's do this. I'm actually weirdly looking forward to it. I hope it's going to be good. I can see that they're actually already boarding one bus, which I guess can't be a bad sign.
The pickup location on my ticket was a street address right opposite Penn Station, which at first struck me as a little sketchy, but with bad memories of Greyhound etched into my brain at this point, again, more on that later, anything that saves me one visit to the Port Authority bus terminal is a good thing in my eyes. And I was still happy to see that it wasn't a completely random, unmarked roadside pickup, and that they did actually have some kind of Flixbus depot, or, well, extra large parking space, I guess. I was just glad it wasn't raining because there was absolutely no station or shelter of any kind. Sadly, the green buses that were boarding right now weren't mine, but me and a few other people who had shown up a little bit early for the bus to Boston were happy to wait to the side for now. Until this white coach pulled up and we were told to go over the road. It would be a roadside boarding after all, and not in an actual branded Flixbus, but oh well. I won't mark them down for a lack of paint. If it had shown up and been Greyhound branded, things would have been different, but I'll accept plain. We're okay with plain. The seats were for sure decent compared to some coach companies, and the storage space available in the overhead lockers was actually way more than you get in Europe. Back home I can never get even a small backpack above my head, but here I could put my 30-litre backpack in there. And I was happy to see that the whole thing was looking fairly clean for now.
So far so good, it seems really quiet. Hopefully it'll be a nice journey.
Still not sure why you lose half your legroom on some buses to pointless footrests, but that's not a battle for right now. What was important right now was leaving New York. I'd had such a good time here in the Big Apple and would for sure be missing it within 0.2 seconds of leaving, but at the same time, I was excited. Shipping up to Boston today was the first leg of my journey up to Maine, where I had a whole New England lighthouses and autumn leaves tour planned. So I knew that adventure was afoot, and as the doors closed and I breathed my last breath of heavily polluted New York air for a while and we pulled away, it seemed like it would be a pretty peaceful adventure at that. But how would the whole journey up to Massachusetts go, and what kind of review am I going to give Flixbus USA when I'm stood on the streets of Boston later? These questions were rolling around my head at the time, but I couldn't help but be optimistic. In contrast to the constantly crowded and sometimes pretty loud Flixbuses in Europe, this one had hardly sold half its seats, and so far we'd all somehow made a silent agreement to stay silent. It's definitely unusual to be on a bus with other people who actually wear headphones and refrain from yelling down the phone for everybody on board to hear, but I was enjoying this new experience, and rolling up the Upper West Side towards the George Washington Bridge was so relaxing that I briefly wondered if Billy Joel wouldn't have rather taken a Flixbus on the Hudson River line. This journey, at somewhere between 4 and 5 hours long, may have been a much shorter one than I've done before, but I think what made it so good was the once-in-a-lifetime cooperation of everybody on board to keep the journey nice and peaceful for each other. Even after we stopped in New Haven, Connecticut, where I assumed that the new people who got on wouldn't pick up on the silent pact of silence and would resort to the usual bus NPC behaviour, somehow the vibe survived. And no, I'm still not sponsored by Flix. I was just genuinely pretty impressed so far, and I was in a good mood because I love exploring the USA, and this was a pretty good way of doing it. Not to mention the fact that seeing some of the leaves changing colour already, having barely gone any further north than New York City, was reassuring me that I was starting my New England tour at just the right time. So what are my only 2 negative points about this trip with Flixbus USA? Before we get into that, I did actually promise that in this video I would explain my beef with Greyhound from a few years ago. I don't actually have that much footage of it, so I thought I'd just explain it like this. This is Tom from the future, editing Tom. Basically, it's just a dumb story that happened while I was filming my first USA video on my first ever time in the USA. I mentioned in the video that it was kind of a stressful situation, but I didn't go into details because I didn't think the full story fit in that video. But probably in this video it fits way better so that I can explain why, by comparison with Greyhound, I'm finding Flixbus USA really amazing for some fairly basic things. So in that video, when traveling between New York City and DC, I was like, Greyhound is a reputable, famous American company, right? Let's try it out. And I booked the tickets way in advance for like $20 each, I think. But what ended up happening was just so dumb because I got an email receipt to confirm that I'd bought them, but the link in the email to get the e-tickets with the QR code and everything didn't work. And I just thought, oh, maybe it's a thing like you can only get the barcode 24 hours before or something like that. But then even on the day, the link to get the actual tickets still didn't work. So I was like, okay, I'll go down to Port Authority a bit early so that I can speak to someone at Greyhound and ask if I can just show the email receipt and they'll let me board with that, or if there's some way I can use the booking number to print out a ticket from a machine. And they said, no, there's no chance of any of that. You have to join the line to get this fixed at customer service. And the line literally didn't move for so long that I was in danger of missing the bus. So I made the call to go to one of the ticket machines and just buy a new ticket, which with like last minute pricing, that one was like $40 or $50. But I was like, okay, it's going to print the ticket right now and at least I can go to DC. So I took the new tickets, went down to the bus to try and board, and it was late. Like really late. Like I could have stayed in line for much longer late. But wait, there's more. I think it was over an hour before somebody from Greyhound came over and was like, hey everybody, by the way, your bus has been cancelled because we have no driver, but we're going to put on a minibus to DC. Yeah, how that makes sense. If this was some kind of magic full self-driving minibus in 2020, that would have been pretty cool. I have no idea. But then they checked all of our tickets, took our tickets off us and formed 2 lines out of all of the people who had been waiting. And obviously the minibus didn't have as many seats as the original bus was going to, and they gave us priority boarding in the order that the tickets were purchased. So with my original ones that I originally booked, I would have been like one of the first ones on if the Greyhound website had worked. But my only tickets right now were what I had just freshly bought and printed from the machine. So we were last and got left behind. It's actually so funny to me now because it's just such a dumb story. But eventually there was another departure like 3 hours later with empty seats and they let us on there. Although I have to say the atmosphere on the bus was kind of loud and like unwelcoming. It was not a very good journey anyway. And yeah, the whole thing left me doing the classic like cursing the air, swearing to never get on a Greyhound ever again. But anyway, that's why I seem to love Flixbus so much, just because I can do normal things like buy a ticket on my phone and show it on my phone and get onto a bus that exists. But like I said, if I was trying really hard to come up with a couple of criticisms for this journey up to Boston, then I would probably say, okay, it's kind of annoying that the power didn't work, and that my video showing the power doesn't work shows how rarely the floors are cleaned. And I guess $30 for this fairly short route could explain why it didn't sell out. I mean, it's not too bad, and I paid that price at short notice, so I wouldn't complain about it. It's not like the mega low cost fares you sometimes see in Europe, but overall, I was pretty happy with it. And my only other complaint is probably how surreptitiously we just slid into Boston South Station without so much as a glimpse of the Boston skyline first. In my normal life, I do actually love cities like this where the buses stop on the outskirts and you can transfer onto the metro instead of having to sit in traffic on the bus for ages while it reaches the centre. Yeah, looking at you there, London. But on this day, I was an excited tourist and a little teaser of some Boston views would have been fun.
Hey, success. So we're in Boston. That was not too bad. Wow, I have to say, Flixbus USA, big shout out. It gets a very good review from me. Left on time, arrived on time. The driver was nice. It wasn't even close to being sold out, so it was really nice and chill on board. How beautiful is Boston Harbour, by the way? Sheesh. Also, everybody on board was nice and quiet, and the whole thing was just a calm and respectable experience. And I'm so sorry that I find it so surprising that that happened in the USA, but I've had some bad experiences before, so forgive me. But honestly, it was absolutely a top tier bus travel experience. Just as good, if not better than Flixbus Europe this time. And I definitely recommend it. I'm just walking through to Boston North Station now because I'm carrying on my journey even further up the northeast coast today. But thank you so much for joining me on this journey, and I'll see you on the next one.